They always keep the air.
Hey, Mark, you want to set it for Jonathan until he arrives if he arrives? All right, it is November 1st, 2021, 5:45 p.m. And I'm going to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. Present are council members Harris, Blake, Marmee. I have the Buddha sitting in for Lang and Barker sitting in for a vacancy. Oh, but Mr. Lang is here. So, first item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in amount of $3,000.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This money came in from the Lincoln County Park District. We had a cooperative effort cleaning up a homeless camp on part city's property and on part county's property. And we'd just like to have this reappropriated into temporary service dollars.
Motion. Motion by Barker. Second by Harris. Questions and or discussion? So you say this is a cooperative effort.
Yep.
So the $3,000 that we're getting reimbursed, correct?
Yes, that is a reimbursement.
That's a reimbursement. And then were there any monies out of our expenses that
Some, but not to this level.
not to this level?
Yes.
Okay. So is it our obligation to do these? Or is it a property maintenance? Where's this going to fall?
On this particular one,
Mhm.
it was a part on city Newark land and part on Lincoln County land.
Gotcha.
Saying it was behind the Babe Ruth ball field.
Okay.
And it was a sizable camp of about 20 different people. So we decided to attack this one as a joint effort.
Okay.
Before we got started, I asked the park district for some dollars to help with this.
Very good.
They said
Fair
yes.
enough. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation amount of $21,500. This is for a termination, in the law director.
She's retired
Okay,
after 20 years. So.
okay.
Second.
Motion by Barker, second by Lang. Questions and or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $13,564.
This is the JAG grant for the city and the county.
Questions?
Motion.
Second. Motion by Barker, second by Lang. Questions and or discussion? Is there any co-op or anything that we'll have to support this? Or is it just
No.
straightforward? Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation amount of $370,000.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is a next step forward on our ARP money. There's two items here that the police department's done a wonderful job of researching and does have a need for. First thing is communication equipment with our handheld radios. That's kind of their lifeline out on the calls. When Marks came into this area, we, during Chief Sarver's tenure, he reached out and we bought refurbished units in 2014. They come out of Houston. So they've kind of been exhausted their life span. we've shipped them out and they're getting repairs above $10,000 now. We've replaced about 100 batteries. I would say that they've replaced some other accessories that have broken, but we've spent quite a bit of money, about $26,000 in less than 2 years just maintaining them. So they've really reached into their life. They also might not be compatible with some new P25 radio authentication requirements that are coming about in 2024. There's also the new proposal is ability they can work Wi-Fi or Bluetooth to increase their capacity locations in schools and buildings, which the old ones did not. They were an early version. They come out of Houston, they were used equipment. Houston bought brand new, like 800 of them or some crazy thing back then. So it was a great deal for the time, but again, they're worn out. And that's the 320,000. That would be 80 new portable units for the police department, expecting a 10 to 15 year lifespan. Actually, a reduction in maintenance for them as we are today, because obviously they'll have all new batteries, and that's all the equipment that comes with them. The second item is for computer hardware software of 50,000. It's a one-time cost that their budget would absorb any maintenance for it. It's a reporting software. We've had a lot of discussion on this. We truly do believe at times the police department gets busy. Someone calls in, they want to report a theft, they want to report something that they don't necessarily need an officer. We'd have an option to send them a text or an email for a link where they could start the reporting process online. Not mandatory. If they want an officer, they'll always get an officer. But if they maybe don't want to wait the hour or something like that for a lower priority item, they could do it that way. We also think sometimes we're getting feedback across the community that somebody says, well, I didn't call because I know they're busy. Well, we don't want that. We want reporting. We want to have good stats to know where things are going on. So we think this could initially cause our call volume to go up a little bit with the reporting, but it'll give us much more accurate figures as we increase security across the community. So they've done a lot of good research on this particular kind of software. It seems very user-friendly. They can build it out real nice. And again, ARP money can buy both these items, the radios and that, and they've done some good research. There's some good information that talks about that. So.
Motion by Lang, second by Barker. Mr. Lang.
Yeah, two questions, Mayor. One, if we approve this, do you have a rough idea of where this leaves us on the COVID money?
Yes.
And then two, as far as the handheld radios, is there any compatibility issues or anything we need to think about as far as like when we go to body cameras and get the grant for that?
I'm not aware of that compatibility issues in that side. I assume they're probably independent of each other, and as I anticipate, I'll surely ask that out to make sure they do. But Clint Eskins does a wonderful job preparing these reports and doing the research as I push for that due diligence in many ways. But we'll ask that. It's a good question that way. As you know, we're getting 18.1 million total, 18.1 and a few numbers after that. So we got 9 million, 90 and some numbers after that. After this, we had 7.5 million, of course, that went for water projects and sewer projects. After this, we'll have about just a hair under $200,000 left in this first allotment piece. I anticipate, and I say that because we're working with the U.S. Treasury, they said the second half would come out 12 months after the first half, so that would be the end of May. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and another thing I'd just say, the radios, we have to get them one way or another. I'll tell you, it's a great use of the money instead of using general fund. I'll be honest with you. And if they are out there fighting crime and they're out doing things and keeping the neighborhood calm during COVID times, so that's really, they'll tell you in many ways that portable radio means so much to them. It's unbelievable. So it's really nice. And I think this morning software makes sense too. So, but yeah, we'll just be around about 200. I'll send a little spreadsheet out to everyone as an update on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just would like to make a comment on this. I'm happy to see we're doing the reporting software also. That's something that Chief McKee and I talked about a couple weeks ago, and he was very adamant that he thought it would be an enhancement to our police force. And so I'm glad to see we're able to do that as well. I'm glad that the ARP funds can fund that.
Yeah, I think that's ARP funds are real easy fit for that because it's less exposure to citizens, and I really think it would be great for the community. Right, as I always talk, we're a tween city. This is obviously done in real large cities. It's not necessarily done in real small cities. We're somewhere between there. So as again, we'll send an officer out if they want one for sure. But if this can start the reporting process, I think it could be wonderful the citizens.
Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the city of Newark to use an employee dishonesty and faithful duty policy in lieu of individual surety bonds pursuant to ORC 3.061 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When Mr. Johnson retired, we began to look at the coverage on officials such as Mr. Johnson, the treasurer, the employee dishonesty policy, and we wanted to make sure that during that lapse, we had some coverage on the next auditor, which was Lord Arresta. We found out we didn't unless we called. The insurance was more on a person and not on the position. So we dug a little further into how our coverage is covered and our limits of coverage. And we found out for the treasurer, we had a $50,000 limit. And for the auditor, we only had a $5,000 limit. And for employee dishonesty, we only had a $15,000 limit. We thought those limits were low and we thought maybe there's a better way to do it. So we contacted our insurance company and they led us towards this coverage. In 1,000-foot view, those limits would all be $250,000. Of cost to go up, our costs on our old limits, and those limits are on positions, not people. So say, the treasurer came and left, doesn't matter, it's on the position, it's not on people. And so our old cost was around $2,034. Our new cost is just a little over $3,000. But in the new cost too, it also covers the public employee pool. That means anybody on any board, which means all council members. That means anybody working in capacity of the city. Let's say we had somebody working in capacity of the city, not driving a city car, and they got in an accident. This would extend to that. So these are all enhanced coverages. The only thing with this new coverage, there is a $1,000 deductible, whereas the old ones we didn't. But we think the limits should be raised, and we think the coverage should be expanded in today's world. And with Mr. Johnson retiring, that's what kind of brought our attention to this particular issue.
Very good. Questions?
Call for a motion.
Second.
Motion by Lang, second by Barker. Any questions and or discussion?
Insurance agent doesn't have questions.
Sure it is.
Let's just get ready to say I'm not an insurance agent.
I'm not either, and I did stay at Holiday Inn Express, so I.
Fair enough.
Pretend here, but, so what is the bottom line as far as how this impacts our premiums?
$1,000 a year more.
Any other questions? I just want to commend you actually on this. I guess I'm shocked that the other boards and everything, especially anybody with a paid board, their personal liability would not protect that if there's any kind of income or any kind of gratuity in any way, shape, or form. So I'm happy to hear that, the rest of the other boards and officials are also going to be covered. Yeah, that wouldn't have been good in a liability situation because it could have fallen under the city.
Yes.
I mean, as far as that liability. So I appreciate you digging into that and upgrading it. So, any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Thank you very much. Just one other thing to mention. The unappropriated balance is $652.47. The rainy day fund balance is at about $994,000 and some change. So just so you know kind of where we're at financially. So and with that, this meeting stands adjourned. Next up, I believe is service.
Jonathan, you're submitting for,
Happy to do it for the vacant spot.
yes. I will call the service committee meeting to order. Those present are myself, Rath, Harris, Barker, Blake, and Lang sitting in. Up first, resolution 21-72, resolution authorizing and directing the director of law to prepare and submit a petition to conform the boundaries of the city of Newark and townships of Newark, Granville, Newton, Madison, and Union in Licking County, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Hall.
I will introduce it to you briefly because I would assume conforming boundaries has never been discussed in this room, I think, and I certainly know about in front of this council, but we don't believe it has at all. So I can, any more technical questions, we'll cast over to our new law director, but she'll be limited. This started a little bit with Auditor Mike Smith of the county, who gave me a call. We do annex properties in, and we do a lot of different things through the years that way. This, to kind of put it in a nutshell, makes those boundaries conforming, to use the right words. It legally puts those boundaries down so that proper taxing can be done in those districts and where those lines are drawn so that they have the right to do it. This will not, I was told by Auditor Smith, it will not probably affect our income. We could get a little bump, but the biggest concern is for the township surrounding and how it affects their income. So what we're doing definitely is being a good neighbor. There's been a little bit of work put into this. So I would say from my office, Director Rhodes a little bit, certainly from the law office, and then over on the county side, the auditors, they brought a team of 3 over, and then their prosecutor's office over there also saw it. So they drafted legislation to kind of do a catch up on everything that's been annexed over the previous years and bring us in conformance that way. So again, it's I might want to say a housekeeping thing, but it's kind of critical. We really had Granville Township was really requesting it. If it was not done, the reason for the emergency clause, it needs to be done by year end for proper taxing for next year, and it can have some dramatic effects to them who obviously deal with smaller budgets than we do.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Parker. Seconded by Lang. Any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, I remember how long ago it was, but at some point we had officials from the city of Heath come in and talk to us about how some properties along our southern border, the northern border of Heath, were not necessarily lining up correctly. Has any of that been considered?
Yeah, that's a little different than this, but just believe it or not on that issue, I spoke to it as frequently as as recent as last Friday. Believe it or not, we've had a little bit of input from a Tim Kelly that used to be with us and is certainly out in Heath too. So he has that great side. And it's a big task in many ways, but on the other side of that, with Moorhead, Brian Moorhead, our engineer, they said their goal is to get that done in the next few months here and have it drawn. Really, we have properties that are split between here and Heath. We have all kinds of things going on and just kind of straighten that out so an entire property is in one city or the other is what Mr. Blake's talking about a little bit. And again, you think about that, it's a kind of wild line, but again, we have people quite confused. It gets a little crazy with property maintenance. Somebody has a house in one city and their sheds in another city and, you know, all the ideas like that. So they are working on it right now. Thanks for asking. We'll keep you updated.
So those examples aren't the same as what these examples are?
They aren't really taxing wise. Those you're either in your one city or not, and you get taxed properly there. This is really from city to townships where we've annexed property. So the property comes in, the boundary hasn't changed on legal print for what it's worth. So now how do you tax? I know the ramifications if the conforming boundary legislation would not pass. There's potential that one township might have to tax some residents that they're not providing any services to. So it gets, there's a couple examples of that are a little bit different. Ms. Law Director, any input to any of that? Or am I hitting it pretty good there? Good, yeah, it's just kind of the legal side of it. I think it's clean. What you're talking about is how we provide services, what we do, say, i.e. Harris Street, a few of those out when we're bound, but we're working on that too. So neither one of these two issues, they're a lot of work, not a whole lot of benefit, but at the end of the day, it is a benefit to the residents and it's something we're tasked to do. So we'll get her done.
And again, the reason for the emergency clause,
Well, we need to get it passed and done by the end of the year so that the other side of those parties and the township is prepared to do the proper budgeting for next year.
I
And
couldn't do that, maybe a 2-day reading.
whatever way you'd like for it to do it. Open either way, as long as it doesn't have to go out for the whole 5 or 6 weeks. That's all I'd say. So whatever you guys like to do.
Mr. Marmy,
2-day reading rule will delay it 30 days. The emergency clause makes it immediate.
It's not a financial, they're the same sort of, but not a non-financial. You're right.
but I don't know if this is for the health, welfare, and benefit of the citizens of Newark, so to speak. And delaying it 30 days, I don't know, if we put it out past the first of the year, would it? Do you, in your opinion, do you think it meets the need of an emergency?
Yes, in my opinion, it would because we're not properly taxing folks.
And there could be some citizens in Newark that are going to be taxed by the township. We don't conform our law.
Okay. Fair enough. Any other questions for the committee? Mr. Lang?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just point of clarification, I noticed in the packet, page 8 seems to be just like an extra bit of information cut off from the rest of the spreadsheet. So just hoping we can fix that on final legislation.
Okay. Yeah, we ought to be able to size that. So that 2 columns is pushed over. Yeah.
Just not clear with that.
Yep, good. Okay.
Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor of passing this on to council signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That'll pass with a vote of 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, thank you.
Next, we'll consider resolution number 21-37, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Newark City Safety Director to certify to the Licking County Auditor the sum of $285,349 incurred by the Newark City Property Maintenance Department with respect to property maintenance violations to be placed as a lien upon certain parcels or real property situated in the city of Newark, Ohio.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is the annual lien document prepared by the Property Maintenance Division for outstanding unpaid property maintenance fines.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Motion by Park.
Second.
Second by Harris. Questions from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor of passing this on to council signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That passes with a motion of 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That concludes the service committee. Up next will be personnel. Right, okay.
I call this personnel committee meeting to order. Present are myself, Mr. Labutus, Mr. Lang, sitting in for Ms. Hall will be Mr. Blake, sitting in for Mr. Bob is Mr. Marmy, and Mr. Chanel. We will consider first ordinance number 21-35, an ordinance amending the position classification, pay range, and department authorization tables of the City of Newark Department of Treasurer, Division of Income Tax by creating the classifications of Assistant Treasurer and Tax Office Manager, abolishing the classification of Assistant Tax Administrator and setting the compensation therefore. I believe you have.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Madam Director. Hope the day finds you well. The first piece before you seeks the committee's support. Our treasurer has had a chance to review his structure and believes some enhancements are in order. So if you split the discussion, we wish to abolish a legacy management position in order to create a new management position. I've included those position descriptions in your packet with the watermark create and abolish for transparency and readability. The second part of that is to create a new position that would be in the bargaining unit. That's an assistant treasurer. And again, that position description is included in your packet.
Questions from the committee?
Yes.
Mr. Marmy.
Okay, so this is just the first half that you're talking about.
Through the chair to Mr. Marmy. So I've asked the committee for the discussion to split the strategy in half. So we're for a management position, it's an abolished creation and a standalone creation classified civil servant that will reside in the bargaining unit.
Okay. I guess my question, first and foremost, is, why are we needing two positions for one? That's the first question.
Through the chair, Mr. Marmy, thank you for your question. My role as HR director is to help decision makers get the talent they need to meet their mission. I've asked our treasurer to be here tonight. And certainly invite his input into the question. I just don't believe I'm in a position to answer it.
Okay.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen there. Can you read?
Why do we need two positions in the place of one?
So I don't understand, we're having the same two positions, they're being renamed.
We're abolishing one and we're creating two.
You're abolishing the assistant tax administrator and it's becoming the office manager. And we're changing the treasurer, so to speak, of what it was to assistant treasurer.
The treasurer is going to become an assistant treasurer.
Was a deputy treasurer prior to then changing to the, I think it's on there.
We're not abolishing a deputy treasurer or any other.
No, that was what it was.
Right.
named. We're changing that to the assistant treasurer. The deputy treasurer was there for, her job was all the whole day. The second part of that deputy treasurer, she had an assistant come in and help her out. Then when Mr. Hall was the treasurer, Mr. Hall and Mrs. Jobs changed that position from the deputy treasurer to a clerk two,
Right.
which it is now.
Right.
Okay. I can have a few comments. So anyway, we are just changing it from what it was to an assistant treasurer. And the assistant treasurer is now going to, and was prior, but in between, some things changed. She's going to be dealing strictly with all the finance part of basically all our CDs and that part, which is a little over $34 million she's going to be dealing with for that person. I shouldn't say she, the person.
I'll add I'll put a little bit of history in here, just pinch. So let's go back 10 years and prior. The income tax office was a separate department than the treasurer's office. Treasurer's office was 105, income tax was 228.
Correct.
Income tax, because finance was a little different back then, they would collect all the income tax, deduct the cost of collecting those taxes separately. What was left fell into the general fund and of course the capital improvements and operating budget. Because of accounting changes several years back, now that income tax is on the general fund. It's no longer a separate standalone to cover the cost. So now all the income tax comes into the general fund. The collections, which is done in income tax office, obviously comes out of the general fund. It's handled totally different because of governmental accounting change. At that point, we merged those two departments at the end of the day, and we thought probably that an account clerk could rotate in and out from tax and treasurer. I mean, back and forth a little bit. That's what's been doing. An account clerk two, or it's called a revenue clerk two now, has been handling the work in the treasurer's office. But it's gotten very complex with electronic downloads, electronic payments, all kinds of electronic transactions. The day we had several, we paid debt for DZ two SIB loan, and we make some payments on that. So there's a lot more complications than it used to be. So while the two departments are together, it still takes unique talent to maintain all the bank accounts and do what needs to be done for that. Again, roll the clock back 10 years before when Charlie Johnston came in, he was the treasurer. The treasurer isn't here as much because again, we know it's a low paid job and about $15,000 job, the lowest pay for the highest position in the department. The assistant treasurer back then was Arlene Hines. She was in the union and the assistant treasurer, kind of complicated a little bit. But at the end of the day, she would oversee it. She had a girl, what used to be Sandy Trowbridge for a number of years, that did half of her time in the tax office and the other half in the treasurer's office in the afternoon. So it was about 1.5 people working all that treasurer's work and balancing all those accounts before all these electronic transactions. Complications become when they hit. You pay, they do credit card payments, say over at the water office today. It might take 3 days for all those to hit our bank accounts. They're divided up in so many ways, balancing accounts and moving them forward get very complex. So now what they're looking at here and talking about, you still have your treasurer, then you have your tax administrator, then you've got an assistant tax administrator, which becomes a tax office manager, different title name, and then you have a assistant treasurer, which is basically that revenue clerk two that's doing it. Some of the complications gets in when they're handling investments, millions of dollars investments. They need a title similar to assistant treasurer for someone on the other end of the phone to talk to somebody to get some things done. That's part of it. There's several things that makes it very complicated when you're a tax office revenue clerk that doesn't work real good with doing this. But again, it's the same amount of positions. They do have a revenue clerk two position. Someone's retiring, they have one unfunded. I mean, we'll look at the budget and how that funding is, all of that. So there could be a revenue clerk two, don't know that's on the books that wouldn't be funded, but it wasn't necessarily abolishing one, but it is taking that income tax administrator by title, changing that title, taking one of those revenue clerk twos and making it more focused right on treasury. That clarifies it a little bit more.
So just to help clarify, is this position looking to hire someone new in the office specifically, or are we just changing titles? Is that what's happening?
Well, we're basically changing titles, but we'd have to put it through the hiring process as it's a different position, I believe. Correct?
I can speak to that, Mayor.
Yep.
Through the chair, Mr. Fennell. So the management positions are classified to be competitive. The bargaining unit positions by contract must be bid internally within division. Second step is within the bargaining unit. Third step is within all city employees. Fourth step, general public.
So let's talk the tax office and manager. How's that going to get?
So management position.
Yep.
This would be a competitive position, but the bargaining unit, to be clear, would not have first right to compete for it as they would with the other bargaining unit position we're discussing.
The treasurer and the tax administrator would do an interview process and select someone and appoint an ID for that. Correct.
So yes, Mr. Mayor. So there's a number of ways that decision makers can make sure that it's a competitive process. Typically, we'll do a structured interview, and I'm a fan of that. There's other, you can do manipulative drills. Can you show us how you can make an investment, balance a book, use a computer, so on and so forth. But typically, yes, it's a structured interview.
An assistant treasurer would follow, because it's in the union bargaining unit, would follow the normal process of, offering it to people within the department, then within the ASME, and then within the city, and then have to go outside and qualify.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Spurgeon, maybe you can clear this up. Mr. Treasurer had indicated the assistant treasurer. We had a deputy treasurer, and that was changing to the assistant treasurer. Can you just clear up what the stories with the?
That's why I'm
Deputy Treasurer
hesitant to, through the chair to Mr. Lang, that's why I'm hesitant to comment. That's why I'm appreciative of our treasurer and mayor's dialogue. I don't pretend to have the institutional understanding. My office engaged when they identified a need, and the need was, we need one positions management, we'll abolish one to get it. And then we need a position within the bargaining unit, as our Mark has said, the primary responsibility is millions of dollars in investments. Now, we had some discussions on funding, but I'm not here to, that's the budgetary process I'm outside of, and that would be more for Tim to speak of. Again, what, if he doesn't want to fund a position versus does he want to abolish a position? I didn't have those discussions.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, do we actually have a deputy treasurer position on the books? Because I didn't see that in the legislation. You just.
Not
was it just a
I'm
mis-
aware of, so I take this out of our New World software, I always show you a table of organization. I can go back and see if there is a legacy position description the council has approved. And I found those before, that was one of my first jobs, to get my hands around position descriptions, because we were a bit fractured across the enterprise. But the table of organization, to be clear, I pull those right out of New World software.
This table is the whole office.
Okay.
In other words, that's why we like to do it that way in legislation. It's all the positions that are currently created. Doesn't always mean they're all funded. The 2 revenue clerk ones right now aren't funded. So but that means they're on the books.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really think there's a lot of unknowns here. Budget is one thing. We're gonna have a new treasurer in 2022. Don't know what direction that treasurer is going to want to go. I really feel that we need to pause on this to see those 2 things happen and get the involvement of whoever the new treasurer is. And so therefore, I would like to make a motion to table this.
I have a motion by Mr. Marmy to table.
I'll say.
Second, Mr. Lang.
Not allowed to say anything. I mean, I understand what you're talking about, Mr. Marmy, and so forth, but we're gonna be short people to get the tax stuff going because those positions aren't being filled.
You're telling us at the 11th hour. Well, the mayor's telling us at the 11th hour, not the treasurer.
Okay, I mean, I understand that, but the process of what I'm trying to do came about after the previous tax administrator retired, and we started looking at things and went through the process of trying to get this put in, and it's taken a little bit longer than I would have thought happened. I didn't realize all the steps and procedures we have to follow, which is fine. But we'd really like to get this going. If there's anything that we can meet individually or with the committee at another time, look at this, it would be greatly appreciated. Well, if I can just interject, talk about the financial impact. I think that's kind of critical to this a
Mr. Chair,
little
point of
bit.
order. I don't think motion to table is debatable. Is it? I thought from a last look at the Robert's rules, it's not. I mean, I don't want to cut off discussion of this.
Well, maybe just informative, just one last, you have a tax administrator, that's the assistant became the tax administrator. We have no assistant tax administrator right now. If you fill that position, then we're committed to that position moving forward at a higher pay than what this is presenting. So it's kind of a timing thing. That's all I'm getting at. They are short somebody in there for that position that does a lot of work coming into tax season. So I'm engaging, this comes under our treasurer, not under my office as mayor. It obviously comes under an elected treasurer, but we helped us move through it. So just information for you, there's a vacancy position there. Trying to adjust it before filling it.
Can you repeat that, please?
The question is, can something be defeated by adopting a motion?
No, it's debatable.
Debatable.
I don't know if there's any further discussion, we need an answer at this minute, but. I don't think
It's not debatable, amendable, or eligible for reconsideration.
So I have a motion by Mr. Marmy, second by Mr. Lang to table this piece of legislation. All in favor, vote by saying aye. All those opposed, same sign. That passes 5-0. Table that legislation. Second piece of legislation is ordinance number 21-36, an ordinance amending the position classification, pay range, and department authorization tables of the city of Newark, Department of Public Service, Division of Streets and Traffic, by creating the classification of equipment operator and setting the compensation therefor. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This piece before you is on behalf of our Director of Public Service. He has had a chance within the Street Traffic Control Department to look at their structure. Believe an equipment operator creation of an additional position is in order. Again, I'm not here to seek funding. That will be an administrative function. I'm here to get them the talent they need to meet their mission. I would call your attention, this is within the classified civil service. This is what is within the bargaining unit. And you will see a bit of a spread on the pay range, 26 to 32, which is a bit unconventional. The reason why previous position descriptions are one position description that recognizes an EO, I'll call it EO, equipment operator, EO in training, EO1, EO2, EO3. Thus the spread in those pay ranges, just for the record.
Questions? Motions? Oh, I have a motion by Mr. Lang. Second. Second by Mr. Fennell. Any questions from the committee?
Just ballpark, what is the budgetary hit of fully funding this position?
Through the chair, Mr. Lang, thank you for your question. At the entry level, it is 38.7 annual. You put in, I like 22% for roll-ups. That's just north of 42K. Top pay will be 48.7 with the roll-ups 59.5.
Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor of passing this on the council, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And that concludes our personnel committee. Council will start at 7 p.m. Thank you.
I know, I got a little. Actually, I need a better one.
I do.
Upstairs.
Yeah, I was like. Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay. I gotta bring up some business cards.
That's a good one to.
I
We often get into those issues with tabling something that's, and then it's not pissed off about that, just the big argument. But I think a lot of times we have that competition. I think just say it, bro, this up. You're the one wanting to take points in right before you table it. Before you cut your cell phone.
John, you turned that off.
Are we